Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Thank you very much for being here. As always, today we are joined by Andres Ayesta. Andres, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you, man.
I'm super excited and yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Always a pleasure to speak to someone with a lot of experience and more of a clinical background as well. Can you give us a quick introduction as to who you are and what it is that you do?
Yeah, I'm a registered dietitian with a background in sports nutrition and strength and conditioning. Originally from Venezuela, I migrated here in 2009 to pursue the dream to, become a dietitian for pro athletes, which I did. And then eventually left that world to start my own company called Planos Nutrition. And it's a company dedicated to providing unbiased, evidence-based nutrition education and coaching to the masses to help them improve health, longevity, and accomplish body composition goals, whether that be weight loss or fat loss.
What brought you into that world? What was it? Did you play sports, or what was it from a kid that was like, hey, I want to help people with their nutrition. I want to pursue this as a career.
I wanted to be a doctor. That was literally the first thing that since I was a kid. Like there's pictures of me wearing like a lab coat and a stethoscope when I was like 6. So, and I do remember I was like an A student, wanted to be the top of my class, but I think it was driven mostly because I wanted to get into a good med school. I didn't. In fact, I took an admission test back in Venezuela, where I'm from, and the school accepted 30 applicants every year. 10,000 people take the test for it. So I ended up in the 300th place, so pretty high up there, but not quite enough to be able to get in. So that was a pretty rough moment for me because my entire life I prepared for that and I didn't get in. And they offer me the option with my scores to be able to get into a sister school related to med school, which was nutrition. At this point, I had no idea what that even was. Like, I was just like, what, nutrition? People go to school for this stuff? And I registered and I started my first semester. And dude, I never looked back. I loved it. I even remember going to a therapist to talk about my like early life crisis of figuring out whether like, so what, I'm not going to be a doctor anymore. And that tied up with my athletic background. I played soccer my entire life. I was just one of those like natural born athletes, but not like exceptional. I was just really good at sports, but not like, I played competitively, but I was not like, like one of those, like, played like in college and all that kind of stuff like that. I was just really good moving. And I really enjoy sports a lot, not to watch and just to really kind of be involved with them. So I wanted to be a doctor, a sports medicine doctor. So 2 things happened that really led me into this nutrition world. One, that therapist back then when I was probably 18 said, doctors are not the only ones wearing lab coats. And lo and behold, I realized like dietitians that was wearing lab coats as a dietitian in the hospitals. And then my cousin also mentioned, super randomly, and it stuck with me for the rest of my life. Well, I guess you could prevent disease rather than treat it, right? And I'm like, wow, that's actually very interesting. And that's actually been the motto for me since I became a dietitian. So those 3 months or the 3 semesters in that school ended up being, I never transferred over to med school, even though I had the possibility to do it. I realized that this is something I wanted more. And then I applied for scholarships here in the US and I got into a school here and the rest is history. So that's kind of what led me into the nutrition path. So it was technically by accident.
Yeah, what an excellent mistake that is, or opportunity. I mean, it's pretty tough. 10,000 people applying, only 30 spots, like coming in 300th place is like, it's pretty close and pretty qualified. Yeah. But like probably in hindsight, a blessing in disguise to lead to this. And I think there's a ton of truth to the whole, like, you can work on helping people in the form of prevention instead of on the medicinal side of things. Not to say, obviously doctors do, wonderful work and we need doctors and we need people on that side as well. But to lessen their load, we can have more people working on prevention via nutrition, fitness, and, all the things. And that's how the kind of this all ties together. And I think there's probably a lot of us, myself included, and obviously yourself, who are in this boat where, from being a kid or younger, maybe a teenager, you wanted to be a doctor because that was just like the thing, being a nutritionist, being a trainer, being a coach. Like, this wasn't really a career path, and certainly not, certainly not something that anyone talked about like at 10 or 15, 20 years ago. But now, since we've all done it, we realize, like, for me, it's like that first person that you help and you're like, oh, this is actually like a real thing. Like, this is a career. This isn't like a part-time job. Like, this is a real thing, and you can really help people.
Well, and I'm curious, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
I knew I wanted to be a sports medicine. So my story, very, very similar to you. I played soccer, was like pretty good, competitive, whatever, but was never going to be professional or anything like that. Tons and tons of injuries. And that led me like in and out of physio clinics and whatever, because I was always injured. And then that made me just get super interested in the human body and how does it work and why does it break and how do we prevent this from happening? And so I was kind of same road. Like, I kind of want to go into like some type of sports medicine, something or other. Never really wanted to go the medical route. I'd say, like, I never had aspirations of going to medical school. Depends what you classify as medical school, I guess. But I actually did go to chiropractic school. So I went into to become a chiropractor. Long story short, that, is for another day and for a different podcast, but I dropped out of that school. Similar realization. I mean, there was a lot of reasons why I dropped out of that school. But part of it was like, hey, I don't necessarily want to do another 3 years of this when I can and only see people after they get injured. I want to be able to work with people and get ahead of the curve. And like, how can I help them prevent injuries and improve their quality of life before something quote unquote breaks, to then come see me. And so it's actually you telling your story was very similar to, it sounded like I was telling myself in an alternate universe. Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah. That's cool. It's interesting.
What were some things, if you can recall, that you learned in school that maybe didn't work so well in practice, or some things that were different that when you kind of got into the real world working with real people, you're like, oh, we learned this in school, but it's not super applicable, or things are different between, school and the real world?
Tons. I think in dietetics gets sometimes a bad rep. Well, not a bad rep. It's very nuanced because in academia, and you see this politically speaking right now, it's, particularly in the United States, when it comes down to what we're teaching kids about nutrition and also what professionals are being taught about nutrition in school and stuff. And I think there's a lot of outdated information that a lot of times does not really keep up in academia as much as it needs to. So, for example, I feel when I was going to school, they were making the transition in the United States from going from the food pyramid to the my plate, right? So we were still taught about the food pyramid, which is an outdated concept, and still people believe that that's actually like, which is crazy, right? Like a lot of the people that kind of go for like, we need to change the system, like believe that we're still using the pyramid. We're not, right? We're using something called my plate. And some of those dietary guidelines like get outdated. And I think that's sort of the model that we're taught when we're in school. So I feel as a dietitian that I go against the grain a little bit when it comes down to the way that I practice, because I do things that can challenge some of the things that we were taught. For example, like, I don't necessarily believe that like certain diets are inherently bad. Like, you can do a ketogenic diet for specific purposes, but, sometimes in schooling, you're taught more of a balanced approach, unless it's more for clinical populations and things like that. I think in going back and thinking through it, like my schooling or like my academic background as a dietitian really set the foundation for understanding how the body works. And I think that's honestly something that was key, because many people teach nutrition without really an understanding of, for example, biochemistry concepts. I took like 3 years of biochemistry to understand exactly how physiology works. And I think that was super important, because it allows you to understand, and I'm still not an expert on it, but to understand how the body works, just like you did for personal training and all those different things. So that was really impactful. But then there's a lot of other areas that I feel like were not really applicable. One thing I taught or I learned, particularly now as a dietitian, but also as a coach, is that people are not necessarily taught too much about how to coach a person. They're being like the only thing we learn, and in the way that we like teach people concepts or help them and counsel them, it's just, things that are very psychology textbook stuff, motivational interviewing, stages of change and things like that, which again, it's important, but I was never taught how to coach someone. So I had to learn that on the go, understanding principles of psychology of change, psychology of habits, and all these different things like that, that I feel were not super important in school. And that I think was missing. The other thing too about dietetics, I feel like it's not something that they're teaching you, which I think it's just any schooling, is the part of like being able to create like this as a business. I think this is a really good opportunity for a lot of us to be able to kind of exploit. And I think I'm seeing more curriculums in academia being kind of geared towards that, which I think is helpful too. Now, dietetics now is a profession that you're required to have a master's degree now. So I think it's expanded a little bit on how much schooling you have to go for. So now it's not just a 4-year college degree. It requires now 4 years plus 2 years of a master's degree. So I think that's another part of it too, which it's increasing the value of the profession, at least the value in the form of, the knowledge you have, not necessarily in the form of yearly pay, unfortunately. Right. So that's what I think I've seen in some of the stuff I've learned or have not learned from dietetics, I feel like.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think this is pretty consistent with a lot of different professions. I know it was the same for me. One of my things with school was like, this is great that we're learning all this knowledge and these like, it felt more like learning pieces of information rather than learning about how to think and how to like help the person, like the actual human being in front of you. And it sounds like, to some degree it was similar for you, where it's like, hey, I can remember a bunch of tests. I can remember a bunch of names of things and remember like if X, then Y, like that's really easy, but human beings all present differently and everyone's got different things. So to your example, we can say as a blanket statement that, the ketogenic diet maybe isn't the most healthy diet for all of America to be on, but for any single individual, is it possible that for the context of their life that is the ideal diet approach for them? Like, sure, of course that's possible. It might not be the vast majority of people, but it's not zero people. So this is my thing, is like, we have to understand the underlying science, like you were saying, what biochemistry is like. Once you understand the principles and the human aspect of it, then you learn how to actually apply this to an actual person and think about all of the what ifs. So when you learn the principle based approach of the underlying science of what's going on, it's really easy to learn how to break the rules, so to speak.
Yeah, I think it's a profession that is just too systematic and really hardwired into the current healthcare system too. I mean, we spend so much time learning how to like chart on a clinical chart and how to like, do nutritional counseling and, and nutritional diagnosis and things like that, that I feel when I'm working with somebody, it's irrelevant. Like, right. I want to be able to have a conversation with someone and being able to understand their pains and their struggles and really dive into those, rather than just simply thinking of what is the nutritional diagnosis that this person is having and like, put it on a chart. And I think that's another reason why I don't really practice in an insurance route, because that's really all that it's required.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I mean, you're not a robot, and your patients in front of you and your clients are also not robots. So there's got to be more to it than that. How would you then, if you can summarize it, how would you describe your nutritional philosophy?
It's a good question. I believe that nutrition starts with the mind. If you don't really change what's happening or the way you think, it's really difficult to change the way you live. And if you don't change the way you live, it's really hard to change the way you eat. So this is why for me, nutrition is sort of I guess like a pillar that I like to use as sort of a foundational pillar to really change like the life of a person as a whole. integrally when we think about it. Because the reality is like, most people want to improve their nutrition for a handful of reasons, right? They want to feel better, they want to lose weight, they want to improve or gain muscle mass, they want to have better performance, which I guess is like the same as feeling great, or they want to improve their health overall and longevity. Like when we think about like all reasons why people start to have an interest in eating better, it's usually something related to any of those like 5 categories. So when we think about any of those 5 categories, the reality is like it's a multi-billion-dollar industry when it comes on to whether it's weight loss or wellness or whatever is the case. And it's all predicated on the idea of providing instructions and directions on what to do, but then not necessarily kind of giving the full integral, holistic approach and view to how we need to take care of our bodies. So my philosophy is I need to change you as a whole, not just change what you're eating, how much protein you're consuming. Like these things are going to be like the part of the tactics. We still need to kind of think big picture in terms of the things we need to do. So in my programs and in my company, we kind of have built this into what we call the 4 pillars of health, which incorporates lifestyle, your nutrition, your movement, and your mindset. So when we think about all those 4 areas, we can kind of find some harmony into everything that we're currently doing. So, and again, we can kind of go a little bit in tangents into each one of those, but the reality is that I feel like most people can get to a really good place in their health when they have good lifestyle habits. They get rid of the bad ones that kind of keep them stuck. They have a balanced nutritional, a balanced nutrition lifestyle that really fits into who they are and what they want, and that's sustainable. They move their body gracefully and consistently, and they have the mindset to be able to support all that. And again, that's like very broad strokes on in terms really what all that means. But I guess my main philosophy around nutrition is that it's just not about nutrition. It's about so many other different areas and so many different things that we have to really look into before we just try to fix your protein intake, for example.
I want to zero in on a couple things there, but we'll start with kind of like the fitting the nutrition into your current lifestyle in the context of your own life piece. I think this is a thing that a lot of people struggle with, and I see it, and I'm sure you see it as well, like with your clients. But in the context of like their culture or their heritage, it's like, well, we eat these foods. How can I lose weight if I can never eat pasta again? How can I lose weight if I can never eat this again? And it's like, well, no one said you don't have to ever eat that again. We just have to like learn how to do that. So how do you go about like helping people understand that like there's not necessarily a single approach. We can do whatever we can let you live your life and have the things that you like and all those things while still having an intelligent nutritional approach. Like what's your game plan for fitting things into people's actual life?
Flexibility. I think for me, it's like a flexible approach to nutrition rooted in basic nutrition science, right? And this is what I teach people from the tactical standpoint. So I'm Hispanic. So for us, it's a diet that is very high in carbohydrates, very to lower and moderate in protein, and also high fat because we like to fry all of our carbs, right? That's literally what we like to do. And it's very similar to most people in other South and Central American countries, Mexico and places like that. So when I'm working with Hispanics, that's usually what comes up. Like how I don't want to give up rice, I don't want to give up all these different things, and the expectation of people when they come to me is, what are you going to remove from my diet? And my response is always like, I think that what you're probably trying to say is like, what else is it that I'm going to add? Because I'm going to add things into your diet, not remove anything. But it all comes down to starting with the basic premise of calorie management, right? And particularly in the weight loss world, which is a big majority of people, that's what they truly want within the health space. And I always explain, like, you want to eat pasta, you want to eat rice, you want to eat all these different things like that. There's nothing keeping you from it. And these things do not make you gain weight or make you fat. It's the overall total caloric intake that you consume on a daily, weekly, monthly basis that drives that. So it's not the rice or the pasta, it's just overall total calories. So what we need to teach you how to do is we need to teach you how to budget that out adequately. Kind of, if you're spending too much money and you don't even know where it's going and you're terrible with finances, well, how do you master that skill? Well, by learning it, by looking at your bank account, by looking to see where your money's going, by looking to see where your money is like being kept, and like what kind of changes you need to be making in your spending lifestyle so that you have enough for that thing you want to buy, or for this thing that you want to save for, or just simply to be able to make it uh okay in a month without having to just have shortages. It's the same thing with nutrition. It just so happens that the goal becomes just more of like a number on the scale or a body composition or something that you feel, and it comes down to adequately budgeting what you're actually putting into your body, because your body is an energy system. It requires specific amount of energy. There's inputs and outputs, and a lot of times people overcomplicate that process. And once you understand that premise, it doesn't matter what kind of lifestyle you have, no matter whether you're a busy dad with 3 kids, which I work with all the time, or whether you're like 18 years of age and you're just in the prime of like your life and you have all the time in the world to be able to do all the things you want to, or you're 50-year-old menopause woman who is struggling with like hormone imbalances. This stuff still applies, and that's the foundation of everything that I teach people. But I always start with the concept of flexibility. And the way I teach it, it's usually through calorie awareness, I like to kind of call it, which is like, let's develop a skill for you to understand what calories are, where are they coming in from, and like in terms of obviously what you're consuming and what you're doing. And once we kind of get a good understanding of that process, then we can start to make adjustments in terms of obviously what's happening. So my approach to managing somebody's diet is not to make a 180 change or a complete 360 in terms of what they're doing, but rather it's starting from where they're at and looking at what kind of changes we need to start to make. Now, granted, that's on a one-on-one, like, a personalized basis, because some people really thrive on like, big changes. But that's sort of I would call it like the summary of the way that I would say I would manage and tackle nutrition based on that.
How do you view within that then tracking calories? Should everyone track calories? Do you always start people by tracking calories? Do you start with more of a habit-based approach? How long do you have people track calories for? Like, what's your whole theory around that?
I'm gonna say yes. I think it's a helpful tool, but I don't think it's a tool people need to be married to for the rest of their lives. Again, going back to the analogy of banking and finances, right? It's like, do people need to track their finances? Well, like if you have like $100 million in the bank, maybe you don't, right? Or like if you're just very naturally financially savvy to be able to help you with this stuff, maybe you don't. But most people probably get benefit from it. So this is the way I think about it when it comes down to nutrition. I think most people can benefit from the awareness that it provides. Now, whether that's like tracking on an app or keeping, like a notepad and putting in the stuff that they're doing, tracking calories provides awareness. It's not so much like the act of the tracking; it's more the awareness that it generates. It provides. Mm-hmm. When you're aware of something, it's easier for you to be able to change it. It's hard for you to change what you cannot see. So that's why I have gotten so into like tracking calories or in more an advanced level macronutrients, so you can understand that. But as a skill, it's something that you do, not to be done forever, but more of as a skill that allows you to really understand what is it that you're putting in your body and what it represents. And then when I'm working with my clients, they will tell me like, wow, like they have a lot of aha moments, right? That's like, I since I started tracking, I realized that this was happening or this was not happening. Or wow, like this food has like that I consume, like it's something super quote unquote healthy, and like I've been having 1,000 calories of it, like every couple days. No wonder why this is happening, right? So I think it creates a level of awareness that a lot of times is the way that people can start to make changes and adjustments into their things. Now, I don't think everybody should do it forever. And I think some people are just really not numbers people and they really struggle with that. So when that's happening, then I usually tell people we need to kind of find some system of awareness tracking. I have a client, for example, who hates numbers, and she will not, for the love of anything, will do any type of tracking. So she tracks through photos and pictures, and she takes pictures of what she eats. It allows her to understand and to see what her days look like. And she visually can tell, like, this was a low protein day, this was a high protein day. And she's mastered that ability like no one I've seen. So that's a tracking process. She's not tracking numbers, but she's still tracking her calories through photos. And that works for her.
The way that I think of this sometimes is like intuitive eating is a popular thing, and you should like do this. The problem that I see with it a lot of the times is people's intuition is broken, and like that's like you were all previously intuitive eating. You were just doing whatever you felt like, and that got you to where you were, which is a place you didn't like. So just trying to do it harder isn't going to help. Like we need to train our intuition by using things like some type of tracking method, be it, just photos or actually weighing and tracking your calories. And then you can wean yourself off of that, because now your intuition is a little bit more dialed in, because you know that how much protein roughly is in some foods, how much carbohydrates, how much fat is in some foods, and you can just make better decisions a little bit easier. Now that might not get you, like bodybuilder stage lean, but probably, I mean, none of my clients are looking for that. I don't think you train any, bodybuilding competitors either. But for the average person, like you get pretty good results just by eyeballing things after you've trained yourself to do so.
I don't think I've ever said this in a podcast, but I don't believe intuitive eating works for a big majority of people. And the reason for it is because our current food system is not designed to help us be intuitive about our choices. Like it's difficult for you to be intuitive when it comes down to managing portions of a bag of chips, because the companies that put those products together, their main sole purpose is to increase sales. And the way they do that is by making sure the food texture, feel, taste, and like is designed for you to eat more of it. So intuitively, it's difficult for you to be able to control that. If we lived in a world where like we had a cow in our backyard and we had chickens and we grew our own food and all these different things like that, which is usually what I tell people, that would be the ideal world, right? And yeah, like, you'll probably not need to be tracking your calories, because you're going to, you have the basic tenets of health and nutrition, right? Like lean meats, fruits and vegetables, whole grains, things like that. It makes sense. And it's obviously, we may talk a little bit about this diet experiment, which I think it really opened up a lot of idea around like this. It really kind of blew my mind in some of the different things that I learned about myself. But I don't believe intuitive eating. It's a really good way to be able to manage like, food intake. Now there's a place in that. Like even I tell my clients, I purposely in my programs have them stop tracking if they're tracking their calories. And I said, we are going to go through 2 weeks without tracking. And they get nervous because they get so used to it, because they're driven now by numbers instead of their own cues. I still want to make sure they understand their cues, but then now we have built a really strong foundation on what really healthy nutrition and balanced nutrition needs to look like and be like. And that's a reason, or that's a way that I feel like where intuitive eating can come into place. But I think for most, it needs to start from a place of a little bit more awareness, instead of just simply relying on your own intuition, particularly because there's so much more stuff that goes into it. Like the whole psychology of eating, the whole emotional eating piece of it, like there's so much stuff that goes along with that it's difficult just to really pay attention to when you're hungry and when you're not.
Yeah, very well said. I think the point on whole foods, and I do want to talk about the diet experiment that you've been doing, is a really good bridge here, because we are fighting against the current food environment. It's certainly more pronounced in North America, even more in the US than it is in Canada, but more so than North America than the rest of the world. But the rest of the world also, also dealing with the similar things, and if not yet, it's coming. But we see people all over the world, and even within North America, who don't follow diets, and they just, for whatever reason, they can just like stay lean and stay healthy. And maybe it's because they, for some reason, don't like chips and junk food and cookies and McDonald's and whatever. And that's a very rare person, I think. But they somehow manage to stay away from it, and they manage to be, lean and healthy, quote unquote, without paying attention. And so then we talk about, well, calories don't matter because I can just not eat those foods and I'm healthy, or I can follow XYZ named trendy diet and I don't have to pay attention to my calories and I can lose weight. It's like, well, you're still finding ways to eat less. So we can engineer our food environment via restriction or via rules that we impose on ourselves to create the same calorie conditions to lose weight, gain weight, or maintain our weight. Sometimes this might be great. Sometimes it's very difficult. But the whole foods approach is a very good one. Like you said, ideal world, we grow stuff in our backyard. We have a couple animals and we get, lean meats, proteins, vegetables, starchy carbs, fresh fruits and vegetables, all these things. And it would be great. But unfortunately, that is not how the world is. So tell us a little bit about your experiment, what you've been doing, just for anyone who might not know, and then what you've found from it for your own self.
Yeah, so a few months ago, I made a video on my YouTube channel about carnivore diets. It's one of the biggest trends in diets that kind of followed the ketogenic craze I think into 2018 to 2021. I think it was ketogenic. And then right after that, it literally follows. Like, I guess people got sick and tired of eating keto, and they're like, we need something new. And so carnivore started to really take the entire wellness influencer world by the storm. So I decided to do a video about it, and most of my videos are very evidence-based. I'll show the research if there's any. And newsflash, spoiler alert, there really isn't a whole lot, or barely any, direct randomized controlled trials on keto, on carnivore diets. There's a ton on keto, but not on carnivore diets. So I share that. I don't think this is a sustainable diet. And I also said that I think the benefits that come from these diet that people claim exist are a result of people massively changing their diet overnight. Because most people that adopts a lot of these diets, most of them are not starting off from, I eat very balanced and healthy and whole foods and stuff, I'm just not going to do carnivore. Most people are going from, I'm desperate, I need to do something. So I heard Joe Schmo is doing carnivore and he's doing incredible. And when you look at the diet of the person that is about to start it, it's like, they're doing McDonald's, or they're doing like fast food and convenience and like, gorging on their fridge every night and all these different things. So immediately, the moment you put yourself in such a restrictive diet and removing 80% of everything that you were consuming, whether it was ideal or not, you're going to feel better. You're going to see results. You're going to lose weight, all these different things. So I share about that in the video. And somebody commented and said, well, have you done carnivore? Because if you've never done it, how can you tell how it feels? And I took that as a challenge. And I said, you know what? I'm actually going to put together an experiment to not just to prove that, it's just simply to understand it with that hypothesis in mind. What happens if I transition, instead of from a shitty diet to carnivore, from a whole foods balanced diet, like literally eliminating a lot of processed sugar, gluten, dairy. I did like a modified Whole30. And for people that don't know what Whole30 is you spend 30 days removing pretty much everything that is either processed. You also remove like beans and legumes. You also remove gluten products. You remove sugar. You remove dairy. So many things, right? The only thing I kept in this was you remove grains as well. The only thing I kept on here was rice, quinoa, and Greek yogurt, and cottage cheese, and dark chocolate. Those are like the only 5 foods that I maintain in this entire experiment. And I'll walk you through the details on what I did next. But what happens when I remove all those things in my whole foods and then transition from there to a carnivore diet? What are the differences that I would experience? But not only that, I decided if I'm going to do this, I might as well just do all the testing associated with it, like if this was a scientific experiment. Mm-hmm. So I went to do a DEXA scan. I went to do a metabolic assessment. I did performance testing. I did some 1-rep maxes on a deadlift, on a bench press, a VO2 max. And I got lab work done, and I tracked everything, my sleep, my everything. I wear like a Whoop tracker, everything. So I could really understand with detail all the data that is associated with this. I just finished Whole Foods last week, And I was very surprised about a lot of different things that happened. But just to, I guess, finish the sort of the format of the experiment, I just finished Whole Foods. Now, that these two diets that I'm doing, the carnivore starts in July, but they're basically protein and calorie controlled. And for people that don't know what that means, it's one of the best ways that you can compare two diets with each other. And that's one of the biggest issues that happen to many people who are not really great with, or a lot of research that is not, great when you
Mm-hmm.
read through it, when they're not really controlling for those things. So what that means is you eat the same amount of calories and a similar amount of protein on both diets to really compare the effects and the benefits or results that you experience from both of them, so they can actually be, again, comparable. So that's something that I'm really planning on doing. And then there's 2 weeks after that calorie protein control where I'm doing I'm just continuing the diet the way that it was, but it's something called ad libitum, which in research means you eat according to your hunger cues without tracking anything. So I can mimic more real world application for people who are not tracking calories. I want to understand what happens if I'm just simply going based on my own hunger cues and not necessarily tracking everything. So that goes on for 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks of what we call a washout, which I'm going to go back to eating normally the way that I did before Whole Foods, which for me, it was very different, which now come to realize I now see it. A lot of protein bars, a lot of like protein shakes, a lot of convenience, ice cream bar here and there, like very flexible. But I had definitely a lot of processed foods now when I think about it. So I'm going to go back to that for 2 weeks to eliminate a lot of the reason people do washout periods in research is to avoid the leftover effects of one specific thing you're testing versus the other. So we'll have 2 weeks and then retest. And then I'm going to start on 30 days of very restricted or very strict carnivore diet plus 2 weeks of unlimited eating. And then I'm going to report the results. So that's the format of this insane, crazy thing that I committed myself to do. And yeah, so far we're kind of halfway through it.
What have you felt since switching to like more of the whole foods only approach?
The first thing I immediately started to notice after finishing 30 days, I was consuming 2,000 calories on a daily basis, and about 170 to 175 grams of protein. I weigh about 100 at the beginning of this experiment, 100, almost 180 pounds, and I'm 5'8".
Mhm.
My metabolic assessment showed me that my calorie requirements are around 22 to 2,300 calories, like for maintenance. Even my Whoop shows me the same thing. So first of all, the thing that I noticed is that I lost weight. So in 30 days eating whole foods, I dropped more than I expected, about 8 pounds.
Wow.
Being very strict. This is as strict as I've been in a long time.
And only like a 200 to 300 calorie deficit. Obviously, you're still training and stuff as well, though, right?
Yeah, it was a 200 to 300 calorie deficit. Now, according to my Whoop, which is the thing that tracks it, which is fairly accurate when I'm looking into it, it was more of like 100 to 200 calorie deficit when I think about it. Which I always tell people, like that number, like sometimes that small deficit, like it's so easy to not really create it. And sometimes this is why people create such a bigger gap in calorie restricted diets, so there's no way that you're going to be able to touch the maintenance level. So I was surprised when I looked into that. Now, interestingly, my DEXA scan didn't really show that difference. It showed the difference in the weight, but apparently I lost muscle mass, which I honestly, when I look at my images, my pictures, my progress, I don't see it. People don't see it. And that's one thing I would tell people, that this is why sometimes I don't really just trust the machines and
Mm-hmm.
data,
Mm-hmm.
because I do believe a DEXA scan, for people that don't know, it's like a MRI of your body, and it looks at, basically take pigments of your body and looks into bone mineral density, muscle mass or lean mass, and then body fat. So it's like a 3-compartment model. And I think the issue with the DEXA scan is the fact that your glycogen levels, which is the amount of carbohydrates your muscles store, can sometimes be like, not sometimes, there's no differences between that and muscle. So it shows like just one big blob. This is muscle essentially. I do believe that when your glycogen levels lower, which I think it happened through this diet because I'm eating less and I'm eating less carbohydrates, I think my muscles look smaller, but I don't necessarily feel like I lost muscle mass as in itself. Now my scale in my bathroom shows me that it did drop a bunch of body fat. And I think when you look at the pictures, if people go into my social media, they're like, holy shit, that's a big change for 30 days. So what did I notice as far as like my own, like the way that I manage things? I definitely I became aware of so many things that I was just doing habitually for years that I had not realized. For example, I had not realized that for me, it was easier to grab a protein bar rather than grabbing, like putting together like a Greek yogurt parfait. It was easier for me to grab a Yasso bar, which is like a Greek yogurt ice cream bar, instead of grabbing a peach, an apple, a bowl of fruit, something like that. So I was relying so much on convenience and just getting things out of the way within certain balance still, because it's not like I had a terrible diet, but I was not really as consistent as I thought I was. In fact, I've been wanting to lean out a little bit since like the year started, and I've struggled with it really. But I don't blame and point fingers. I just simply know that I was not really as consistent as I needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
So this really opened my eyes to, one, understanding that I had bad habits or certain habits that were not really serving me, but I was so unaware of them because I was not really forcing myself to do something like this. And number two, it's made me also realize that, you can eat really, really good and enjoy the taste of food when you're forced to just come up with different ways to do that. I realized week in, if I'm only going to be eating chicken, sweet potatoes, and broccoli, this is going to get too boring, too fast. I'm going to hate my life for this. So instead, I thought, well, what can I do? So I started looking up recipes. I started looking up ideas. This week, I just made this like baked oatmeal, which honestly was delicious. It tasted like a cake. So never even thought about that. And it took me 10 minutes to make. So it's really gotten me to just be more creative in the kitchen. Like my wife is super happy because she's the one that was doing a lot of the cooking before. And now I'm the one taking care of this. It hasn't really affected anything in terms of my time management. So that's been really impressive. And the last thing I'll share in terms of like the biggest realizations I've had is my hunger has been managed better and my cravings have gone down. I have a huge sweet tooth, massive. And in fact, I realized I was eating way too much sugar, whether it was emotionally, like, because like, a tough day at work, then I will go to the pantry and like grab some dark chocolate, whatever that's the case, but too much of it sometimes. And I was super scared because, one, I was eliminating for the first time ever in my life sweeteners, like any type of artificial or non-nutritive sweetener, stevias, monk fruits, all those stuff gone. And the only sweet things that I had were like the little sugar in the dark chocolate that was 85%, dates, which have a low glycemic index, and fruit. That was the only thing. And I realized, yes, I still have the cravings for the sweetness, but then those things were like what I used for, and they were a lot more managed. In my mind, I thought it was going to be so hard to do, and it wasn't. So those are big realizations.
This really comes full circle with the awareness piece that you were talking about earlier, because even someone like yourself, who is like objectively, like, you're not overweight, you're in great shape, you're in great health, like this is your profession, like, what's up. We can still slip into these little things where it's like, ever so slightly, you're relying a little bit too much on easy to grab foods or, ice cream bars and stuff like that. And obviously it wasn't like some crazy amount, like you're just going drive through McDonald's every single day. So there's levels to this, but even then we can start to slip into these things. And so this is why, I'm in agreement with you that it's a good tool to have in your toolbox to either track calories or just like keep a food log or do experiments, like self experiments like these every so often, just to kind of like get things back in check, because it's so easy in our current food environment, even knowing all the things that just to slip into these like not terrible habits, but maybe not optimal habits either, right? Like there's nothing wrong. I'm sure, when you go back to it, it's not like you're never going to have an ice cream bar again. Like that's a little bit silly. Never going to have a protein shake again. Like there's nothing wrong with protein shakes. It's just like this reliance on convenience we can start to take a little bit too far, and it can really snowball into something much more problematic than, protein shakes and a low calorie frozen yogurt bar. But it can get there if left unchecked.
Yeah, and it just simply opens up your eyes to things you were not seeing. It's like blind spots that sometimes you're not really noticing. One of my clients, his name is Mike. He loves to do, changes and things, and I offered to a lot of my clients to say, hey, this is what I'm starting. I want to encourage you guys to join me, and the Whole Foods is part of it. I don't want you to even consider doing carnivore. I just simply want you to join me on this because I think it's a really good change. And one of them actually take me up on it and decided to do it with me. He did 30 days, and you look at the not just the results of this guy, it's just the way that he's feeling. He's like, I just realized all these things, and then very similar to me. And now he's finished, and he's like, I can see how I'm gonna maintain like probably 70 or 80% of everything that I changed and switched over. And now I'm going to kind of open up like another 70 or another 30 to 20% to the things that I still miss. Right? Like the frozen yogurt bars, like the dinner with my wife without necessarily even paying attention to like that this is Whole Foods or not. So it's, I think that really creates ingrained habits that are helpful because you start to realize how good something feels when you do it that way, and when something happens, from that perspective. And honestly, I was sharing pictures of my meals on Instagram, and people were asking me like, so what diet is it that you're on? I was like, just Whole Foods. I was like, well, that looks delicious. It's like, right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes like you just don't necessarily see it as something that is possible, because I do believe like the human brain is just it likes um uh, it likes something familiar, right? It likes to just stay within the same kind of rhythm, so it doesn't have to think too much. And not to get too much into the psychology, but something that people are really don't understand, it's like we're only using about 1% of our conscious brain to be able to make decisions. The other everything else that we do and say, even this interaction, is a result of 99% of what happening into the subconscious that we cannot see, right? So most of the things you do on a daily basis are a result of that, and that subconscious is built on your history, your memories, your traumas, your happy moments, and all those different things. And food, guess what? It's been a part of all of that, whether it's something happy or sad or whatever is the case. So you're naturally making decisions from that internal part of yourself. And there's only one really small part that you can consciously see. So that's why awareness again brings it back as it's like the biggest, the single most important driver of change, and also the biggest mistake people make, which is not having that awareness. And I think when people come to us as personal trainers, nutrition coaches, our job, I always tell people, you don't invest and pay for information. There's plenty of that, like especially in this world, like maybe 30, 50 years ago when like people did not have as immediate access. Yes, you paid for information because it was not readily accessible. Now it's everywhere. It's at the tip of your fingers when you grab your phone. People pay because they need to be told or shown what they're missing, and be held accountable to change those things consistently. And that is invaluable because, well, if people were good at it, which some people are in certain domains, well, they wouldn't have a problem and we wouldn't have a job.
Totally agree with that. It's like, the information it's all out there. Google it. It'll, you might get a lot of answers. Some of them might be nonsense, some of them whatever, but you can find the right stuff like pretty easily. It's just about doing it. Like the execution is the hard part, and that's really where we come in. What do you anticipate now is going to happen? I know you haven't started as of recording this. By the time this episode comes out, you may already be into it, but what do you anticipate is going to happen when you switch over to carnivore?
I know I'm going to feel better. And what do I mean by that? I did a ketogenic experiment back in 2017, 2018. I did a whole year on keto. And the reason I did it is because I wanted to experiment what it felt like, because at the time I was working at a facility that was coaching people how to do a keto diet for neurological benefits, which there's a ton of research around. So I was like, I can't really be teaching people how to do this if I don't really do this myself, at least in that moment I thought about that. So I know what it's like to feel in a state of something known as ketosis, which means whenever your body is forced to use ketone bodies as the main source of fuel, because it's the only substrate that your brain can use besides glucose, which is the breakdown of carbohydrates into its usable form in your body. So ketone bodies is a different kind. And some people like to call it a cleaner energy. It's just simply it's a form of it's the byproduct of fat oxidation or fat metabolism, and it's just more like it has a higher yield. Let's just put it that way, right? And we have a very large amount of it. So when you can tap into your ability to be able to do that, a flood of ketones in your blood and the brain and everything else makes you feel better, right? So you have more consistent energy because your insulin levels are maintained, your blood sugar is maintained, so you don't have like big spikes and drops. So I anticipate the way that I did back then, when you lower carbs low enough, eventually your body needs to switch its systems for survival purposes. This is why we can live with only water for 20 days, sometimes more, depending on how much fat you carry, is because you can train your body to live off of your own fat storage and to really kind of change the way your metabolism works. Mm-hmm. So carnivore is most likely going to do that for me, but not in the first week. And the first week is going to be hell for me. Not only because of the fact that I'm going to be extremely constipated, because there's literally, I just literally logged today. Just so it so happened that today I started to re-log on my tracker what a day would look like. And it was so sad because there were just literally like 6-7 things in it. It kind of looks cool as like a one meal thing, but like when you think about this, like for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I think mine had like, 2 slices of bacon, 3 tablespoons of butter, like 6 eggs, and like, 4 ounces of ground beef for breakfast. And then I had like, I added some like, a whole rotisserie chicken for lunch, like half of it. And then I had like salmon with like cooked in butter. And that was it. So it's, in that alone, it was like almost 2,000 calories. So I know the first week, I think it had like 1.4 grams of fiber. And I think the only carbohydrates that I'm consuming there, it's just the carbs that are inherently present in meats, because when you think about meat, it's a muscle, right? So there's some glycogen that is still present in there. So I'm probably going to be constipated because there's lack of fiber in there. And I'm also going to feel like shit the first week because my body has not really made a full transition. But then week 2, and that's when I'm going to start to feel like more clarity. It's going to have to feel like more energized and all those different things like that. So that's what I can anticipate. Like, I know for a fact that my energy is probably going to be a little bit different, but I just don't know how much different it's going to be. I also don't know how my hunger is going to be when I'm really maintaining 2,000 calories. Because one thing I didn't really say is that when I did keto back then, I gained 20 pounds on it. Wow. And people were like, you gained 20 pounds on keto? Like, I did, because I wasn't really tracking anything. I was just simply doing the diet. And this is a time where keto was becoming mainstream, and a lot of these
coffee and everything.
Yeah. Not only that, but a lot of companies starting to come up with keto products, keto friendly foods, keto approved. And these were like cookies that were keto approved that were just like a fat bomb. And there was literally a company called Fat Bombs too, which it was like 500 calories in one serving, fat and just like sweetened with erythritol or something like that. So then I was probably consuming in the upwards of 3,000 to 4,000 calories of fat and protein without even realizing it. And this is what I would probably attribute the weight gain to. I went from like 172 to like 187, like, through that process. And it's not until like I look back in a picture, I'm like, wait, but I'm doing keto. And then like immediately a light bulb went on. I was like, this is like in my beginning of my career when I was still working in like kind of clinical setting. And that's the other part, like, dietitians, a lot of times they're just completely unaware and they're just still falling prey to a lot of these fat diets and stuff. So that's what I envision is going to happen. Now, what I'm more interested in is to seeing, blood work differences, body composition differences, performance differences. Some people have shared, and I agree, I think 30 days is too short of a time to do it, but there's no way in hell I'm putting myself through a longer period of time. I'm already doing plenty. Sure. Yeah. So the people there's already people that have criticized me on my YouTube, and it's like, oh, you probably need to be doing like 6 months for you to be able to kind of like have, it's like, okay, well, good luck. Try to do what I'm doing right now and see how that goes. Yeah. So yeah, I think 30 days at least will kind of give me a snapshot, which I think it's enough time.
And that's the point. It's just to get a feel for that. Like, The best way to do this most scientifically would be probably to do it for 10 years. Like, let's see what happens over 10 years versus an exact copy of you, which is impossible. To do a different approach over the same 10 years and same training, same sleep, same stress, same everything, which is impossible. So it's like, we just do the best we can, and we make some inferences. Not to mention, like, it's not exactly an easy thing to follow. So most people who would be even doing this, who see some carnivore influencer and they say, hey, I want to try this, like, most people also won't be able to stick to pure carnivore for that long. You're going to have cheat meals, and you're going to have a cake, and you're going to have rice and pasta and bread and tacos, and you're going to have other things. And it's like, okay, well, you didn't do it either. So like, what are we talking about here?
We're just that's what I hear often. Yeah. It's like people are like, oh, I'm carnivore. It's like, oh yeah, like, well, yeah, sometimes I get off of it. It's like, what do you mean? It's like, well, like I went to like this thing and I had alcohol and like I had this and this. It's like, okay, so it's you kind of follow a carnivore. And that's the other part too. Like they get stuck and they just feel like nothing is working, and or they just do something crazy. Like there was a news article that came out nationally, but it's actually a guy like across the bridge from me in St. Pete where he had like his hands where you saw that? Yeah. It's like it made headlines. Yellow. Like you can see that, and they reported this in the news. And when they asked him, what have you been eating? And the guy was like following a carnivore diet, but he was probably having closer to like 1 or 2 blocks of cheese a day.
Yeah.
Insane. So it's also a part of, people hear this in like mainstream in like 90-second reels and like quick like carousels on social media, like quick TikToks, and they immediately start to put those pieces. It's like, this is exactly what I'm going to do. They Google it quickly exactly how to do it. So I'm going to start it, right? Without any type of guidance or any type of, like way to do it adequately. And this is another reason why I'm documented this, so I can show you what a day-to-day looks like. At the same time, the struggles that come with it. It's crazy because when you go on carnivore forums and online, people talk so openly about the struggles around it, like it's like a great thing. Like when is the hairs gonna when do literally, this is a little comment, I think it says something, when do the shits end?
Oh my God.
I'm like, or is it normal for me after 6 months to still be losing hair? And people are like, oh yeah, like it's normal. It's like this like peer-to-peer like validation on this crazy stuff. So I want to just be more neutral on it. And honestly, I will tell people, like, if I felt great and I felt like so many of these incredible things, I'll share it.
Sure.
But at the same time, I'm also talking about the sustainability of it all while I'm doing 2 weeks afterwards, just simply without tracking anything, and see how things really go from there. And we'll see kind of how it goes. I think this is another reason why I feel like keto was something that I extended for years, because I liked how it felt, but I wasn't really aware of what was happening in the back end of me and the way that I was eating and what it was causing in my body. Lack of awareness. So
to some degree, I think even like you were talking about all of the businesses that came up around keto, these fat bombs and these cookies and stuff. I think that was actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I never really thought about this before, but that was probably part of what made keto worse. Because if you think about what like a traditional keto diet is doing, and most people, and you would know this better than me, weren't even doing like real keto. They were just not eating carbs, right? They're not even doing that high fat. They're just doing like moderate fat, moderate protein, and like just super low carbs. If you just did that, it's not like a terrible way to eat, because chances are when you're doing that, you're also removing like most of the junk food, right? You're not having chips, you're not having French fries, you're not having like a lot of these classic junk foods. And so if you just did that, like, yeah, that's great. But when you start replacing a regular cookie or regular chips for keto chips and keto cookies, and now you've just replaced all those calories that you removed, yeah, that's the end of it. You're gonna start gaining weight like you did, and that's not good. That's not what anyone set out on keto to do, right? So,
which is what most people do. It's like they go back to their normal habits because they finished the diet,
right?
And they don't have a plan for after the plan, which is another big issue.
Yes. And I think we're starting to see this a little bit with carnivore. There's some like carnivore snacks and stuff that I see coming up. I've not looked into them enough to know what the ingredients are and what they are, but like, if you create the same food environment that you're trying to escape from, which is like mass convenience and easy, abundant calories that don't really fill you up that much, then we're just going to create the same problem, or they are going to create the same problem that they're exactly trying to escape from.
And we won't know the long-term effects until we look at the longitudinal studies in 2050. and 2060,
right.
when they're going to look back into like, just like we look at the studies from like, you know, the 60s and 70s and all that kind of stuff like that, we're going to start to look at that, right? This is like when the big wellness influencing trend, like, you know, like boom came around, like when people talk about this in the 2050s, and they say like, this is when all these wellness influencers were talking about cutting out this and doing all that, and like the cold plunging and all these different, like, you know, kind of like things that came around and in a way kind of like stuck, and you'll see, right, it's like, you know, the incidence of death and the a lot of correlational research. But you know, that's, unfortunately, this is the other part too that we'll currently fight on, which is, you know, we won't know until later on. And I think this is the other part with carnivore, which is, and this is something that a lot of like the people that I look up to in terms of the content they share, is you can certainly do keto for 4 months and 5 months and whatever, and that's not that big of a consequence in terms of your health, but it's more like the long-term approach to it that can really hurt people. And I think this is a big part of it. There's even people in the wellness space who've come out and shared like, yeah, I think I was wrong. What's his name? Paul Saladino.
Paul Saladino, the main guy of Carnivore.
He wrote literally a book on it, and then he went on a podcast saying like, I just don't think carnivore is for me. I've started to see some things happening in my health that were not great. So yeah, now I'm gonna push fruits and raw dairy and meat. Like so it's like this thing is like, okay, like I looked up to you, like imagine like being like a fanatic. It's like, you know, I looked up to you, this is the way I look, and now you're gonna tell me like, and people are gonna do that. It's like, okay, I guess I'm gonna eat fruit now.
Right.
So that's a part of it that I think it's just so difficult to navigate in this landscape of health and fitness, and now meshed with politics, which is again even scarier.
Yeah.
So
on the one hand, like I think it's fine. You know, people can experiment and do whatever they want, and it's fine and a good thing to change your mind and be like, hey, in light of new evidence, science or my own experience, I've now changed my mind. Like that's all fine and good, and we should all challenge our own ideas and change our mind and be open about it when we do so. The problem is like the way that you said it the way that he said it the first time, and the way that these people like, this is the only way, this is right because of all this stuff. Like there's no way I'm wrong, and it's like, well, you convinced all thousands, maybe millions, or maybe not millions, but like a lot of people to do this, and now what? And now it's gone way too far. Like we don't need to. It's nice to have like hardcore empirical scientific data on all these things and 50-year longitudinal studies and all this stuff. It's all fine and good, but sometimes we can just use a little bit of logic and like inference what we think might happen. And like, you know, nutritional science, one of my favorite quotes from the podcast, one of my good buddies said very like a long time ago, he's like, nutrition science is really hard, but like eating healthy is pretty simple. And so if we can stick to the simple things and just worry about how do we actually just like change our food environment to make ourselves more healthy and change our habits, we're probably going to be okay, rather than trying to look for, you know, the next magic diet.
100%. I think it's simplification, not not overcomplicating things, but just simplifying. And I think that's where people find more peace in the way that they eat. Mm-hmm. And they're not overthinking every decision that they're making around it, which I think is the biggest issue now. It's like I feel for people that go into a grocery store today that are just consuming all this content, because you know, you don't know what to choose.
Yeah, information overload, but being simple is going to solve a lot of issues for sure.
100%.
Well, good luck with your experiments, my friend. I'm looking forward to the results of them, and you know, what insights you gain from them, and you know, the content that you'll make around it. It'll be interesting nonetheless. So always good insights and good things to learn.
To report results and
of course,
kind of give people some feedback on that.
Of course. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about in relation to the experiments, or anything that you think we missed today?
No, I think the last thing I'll leave people with is just to kind of get more practical and like, okay, what can I walk away with from this conversation? With my clients, I establish a very base foundation on what I think healthy nutrition and just fitness health management needs to look like, and I literally distill it down to like 5 big things, and they're boring things, to be honest. I always like preface what I'm about to say with this, because people expect this like 5 secrets, and the reality is like these 5 things I'm about to share you probably already know.
Yeah.
but I'm gonna break them down into. I want people listening to this to really, like, when we kind of associate names to certain things, I feel like it kind of makes it a little bit easier for us to kind of stick to things. So we can call it the Power Five or the Core Five, that you can think about implementing every single day. That doing this stupid things every day can guarantee most likely you're not only you're going to achieve your goals as far as weight loss or weight gain or whatever is the case, but also you're going to be able to sustain them. Because in my 12 years as a dietitian, I can attribute the success of those who've maintained the results to 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 of these things. Number one, get protein. Okay, like protein across the board of any diet, it still remains the protagonist in all of them. You need to get enough. And the current dietary guidelines do not support that as much as probably we need. I'm not going to talk numbers because I think that's just not as important as it is just to prioritize that there's a protein source added into your meal. I'm not going to get into the sources and stuff, just, the ChatGPT it. So that's number one, get enough protein. Second, get enough fiber. I'm not going to get much of that in my carnivore experiment, but I definitely got plenty of this, and it makes a big difference in gut health, in satiety, in overall feelings, a vehicle to get a bunch of vitamins and minerals. And I promise you that it's a better way to get that than just simply getting an overpriced greens powder. Number three, get water. Hydrate adequately. Drink enough. I'm not talking about hydrogenated water. I'm not talking about flavor, the water that this Ashton Hall guy made famous.
Yeah.
I'm talking about just plain water. Not many of us are prioritizing getting enough hydration in our body. 60+% of our body's water. We need to get enough of it. Number four is get food. Get enough food. The reason I say this is I really turn it into what we call no skipping meals. And the reason I say this is because your body needs fuel. And whether you're practicing some form of intermittent fasting, which again, it's like an entire topic of in itself, the reality is like most people who skip meals tend to overeat in subsequent ones. And this is what happens to a lot of the parents and a lot of the people over 30 that I talk to. They're too busy with work. They're too busy with kids, with relationships, with marriage, and all these different things like that. So food becomes less of a priority and more of a survival thing. And sometimes you're just so busy going through life that because your body is really good at surviving, can go long periods without food. And it's not until you come home late at night, tired, exhausted, and just wanting to wind down and emotionally in a place where you just don't want to really make decisions, that you make the worst and the poorest decisions around the way you need to take care of your body. So get enough fuel, get enough food, prioritize that. And the last one is get movement, get moving. It doesn't have to be a 60-minute workout. It doesn't have to be, you got to move more because we're such a sedentary population now. Me, myself included. You and I are just recording this podcast sitting down in a chair. And most likely I'm going to spend a big amount of my day sitting in the very same chair today. So we have to really make it a priority. We have to become aware of the fact that we are couch potatoes. Whether you want to believe that your 30-minute workout that you do at Orange Theory Fitness is enough, trust me, it's not. It's better than nothing, I will tell you, but move your body more a little bit throughout the day. Do these 5 things for 30 days in a row. Check all those boxes and you'll see what happens. It's boring. It's simple. You know all this, but not many people are actually consistently doing that.
Exactly right. I mean, I couldn't agree more with those 5 things. Like, very important 5 things, very non-revolutionary, boring type of things. But these are the things that we need to hear. It's not carnivore. It's not intermittent fasting. It's not hydrogenated water. It's not, XYZ supplement. It's like, that's not the missing piece. Like, if you've been doing all of those things and you're still somehow not getting results and you're tracking your calories, then maybe there's something else there. But like, do those things, like you just said, do those things for 30 days and then see what's happening. And I would almost guarantee that you're going to, at a bare minimum, feel better. So
100%.
Very well said. Thank you for that. Where can people find you? Where can they learn more? Where can they follow about your experiment? Where's the best place?
So a couple places, if you want to just stay up to date in what I do every day, and what I'm up to in terms of this experiment or any upcoming ones, because there's a couple more that I want to kind of test out on other fats and things. Instagram is the best place at Andres Ayesta. Super simple. Same thing for my YouTube channel, which is more of my long form content and where I actually share a little bit more longer pieces of information. That's the same thing, Andres Ayesta. You can just simply type my first and last name and do that. And then you can also check out our website, planosnutrition.com, which is more of like, the work that we do, health, fitness, nutrition coaching. And really, we have something called like the Blueprint Method, which is our signature methodology that really we go in depth into all these pillars that we just talked about and help people not just achieve their goal, but just sustain that goal in the long term. And that's one of the big, most important drivers in terms of really what I want. I tell people I don't really care about the 20 pounds you lose in 6 months. I care more about the 20 pounds that you kept off 6 years later. So that to me, it's what I like to consider success as a coach and as a dietitian as well.
Awesome. Very good. Great stuff, my friend. I'll leave the links to find your contact info and social media and stuff in the show notes, so it's easy to find for everybody. But thank you very much for taking the time today and for sharing with us. It's been an enlightening conversation. I'm looking forward to your experiments and all the other things that you've got going on. So, guys, please give him a follow and keep up with everything that he's got going on. Any last words that you want to leave the people with here in closing?
No, I think I think we kind of shared tons of it. And if there's anything you need from me, just feel free to shoot me a message. I'm super responsive and would love to chat or talk if there's anything specific that you still were wondering about our conversation.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, sir. Everybody, thanks for listening. Appreciate you guys always. Make sure you're following both of us. Like, share, subscribe to the podcast. Send it to your friends who you know that need to hear it, especially your friends who are considering doing the carnivore diet. We'll leave it at that. Go outside. Be a good person. See you next time.